I sat in my corner office on the top floor of the Whitmore building, the city skyline spilling into my windows like a living postcard. Below, the streets of New York pulsed with a kind of energy only August heat can stir. Yellow cabs honking, street vendors calling out, and the occasional breeze carrying the faint scent of roasted almonds from the stand across the street. My silk blouse clung lightly to my skin, the soft champagne fabric whispering against my wrist as I adjusted the thin diamond bracelet I designed myself. Most people saw it as an accessory. I saw it as a reminder. The phone on my desk buzzed once, then twice. I reached for it absently, expecting a message from my head designer about the fall collection. But the notification froze me. From Harper Whitman. Saw your parents at the Maxwell Gala tonight. Thought you'd want to know. They were wearing pieces that looked like yours. My breath caught. I stared at the text, the words swimming slightly as an old ache twisted somewhere deep inside me. It had been nearly 12 years since I'd seen them. 12 years since the day I came home and found my jewelry box empty. I leaned back in my chair, the leather cool against my shoulders. Outside, the sun was setting, gilding the city in gold. Inside, memories I'd kept locked away for over a decade began to stir, and I knew, whether I wanted it or not, the past had just come knocking. Back then, I was just Emily Carter, 19 years old, still living in the small clapboard house on the edge of Charleston, South Carolina. The air in that house always smelled faintly of my mother's lavender cleaner, sharp and artificial, nothing like the warm, natural scent of my grandmother's garden. My grandmother, Alice, had been the only person who ever made me feel truly seen. She'd given me my first piece of jewelry on my 12th birthday, a delicate silver charm in the shape of a feather. A feather reminds you to stay light, even when the world feels heavy, she'd said, slipping it into my palm. By 19, I'd built a modest collection, a pearl necklace from Grandma, a rose gold locket I'd saved up for myself, and a few vintage rings I'd hunted down at estate sales. Every piece had a story. Every piece felt like part of me. One sticky summer afternoon, I came home from my shift at the coffee shop. My feet ached, my apron still smelled of espresso, and all I wanted was to change into shorts and collapse on my bed. But when I opened my bedroom door, the air felt wrong, still, almost hollow. I crossed to my dresser and pulled open the top drawer. Empty. My heart started pounding. I yanked open the next drawer. Empty too. The velvet-lined box where I kept my jewelry sat open, the imprint of each missing piece etched in the fabric like tiny ghosts. I found my parents in the kitchen. My dad wouldn't meet my eyes. My mom kept her voice brisk, like she was announcing the weather. We had to sell it, Emily. The bills were piling up. It was just jewelry. Just jewelry. I remember my hands going cold, my throat burning as if I'd swallowed glass. It wasn't yours to sell, I whispered, but my voice shook so badly it barely carried. You'll understand when you're older, my father said, turning away. I went to my room, sat on the floor, and cried until my chest ached. When I finally stopped, I noticed something glinting under the bed, the silver feather charm. They hadn't found it. I picked it up and closed my fingers around it so tightly the edges dug into my palm. That night, I packed a duffel bag. A few clothes. My worn sketchbook. The charm on a thin chain. At sunrise, I walked out of that house, vowing I'd never depend on them again. Charleston looked different when you were broke and on your own. The pastel facades and cobblestone streets felt less like history and more like obstacles when you didn't know where your next meal was coming from. I found a tiny room above a bakery, one narrow bed, one squeaky fan, and a single window that overlooked a brick wall. Rent was cheap, but so was everything else about it. My first job was at Bennett and Rose, a boutique tucked between an antique shop and a wine bar. From the outside, it looked like a place I could never belong. Polished glass windows, crystal lighting, and displays where necklaces lay like sleeping royalty. But the owner, Margaret Rose, hired me as a sales assistant after a 15-minute conversation. Margaret was in her late 50s, with short silver hair and the kind of poise you couldn't fake. She wore pearls not because they were trendy, but because she understood them. She caught me studying a sapphire pendant one slow Tuesday. "You've got an eye," she said. "Do you draw?" I showed her my sketchbook, crude pencil drawings of ring settings, chain designs, and little experimental class mechanisms I'd thought up while daydreaming in class. From that day, Margaret began teaching me. She showed me how to identify gemstone cuts, how to read a loop, how to feel for weight and balance in a piece. She taught me the difference between beauty and brilliance. "Anyone can make something pretty, Emily," she'd say. "But true design tells a story." I started staying late after closing, watching her repair heirloom pieces under the warm glow of her desk lamp. The first time she let me polish a pendant, I was terrified I'd ruin it. But my hands were steady, and when I lifted it to the light, Margaret only smiled. "You'll do just fine." Still, it wasn't easy. There were nights I went to bed hungry, mornings I walked to work in the rain because I couldn't afford the bus. Suppliers looked right through me when I asked questions, assuming I was just the girl at the counter. More than once, I locked myself in the shop's back room just to cry in private. But slowly, I started to win. A customer commissioned me to redesign her grandmother's wedding ring, my first custom project. When she saw the finished piece, her eyes filled with tears. She hugged me so tightly I thought I'd lose my breath. That job paid my rent for 2 months. By 23, I'd saved enough to rent a tiny workshop and launch a small online store. I called it Featherlight, after the charm I still wore on a chain under my blouse. Orders trickled in, then flooded when a stylist used one of my necklaces in a magazine shoot. Celebrities started wearing my pieces. My name never appeared in the headlines, but the brand began to grow. And I made sure of one thing: my parents never knew. It happened on a Thursday, the kind of late summer day where the city air felt heavy with the promise of rain. I was reviewing the final sketches for our holiday collection in my flagship boutique on Madison Avenue. The chandeliers above cast warm pools of light across velvet displays, each one holding pieces that had taken months to perfect. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and polished wood. Soft jazz floated in the background. The front door chimed. I glanced up from my desk in the glass-walled mezzanine and froze. My parents. They stood just inside the boutique, looking around like they'd stepped into another world. My mother's gaze swept the displays, lingering on a diamond choker under glass. My father shuffled his feet, awkward in a space where every detail whispered wealth. One of my sales associates approached them. I could see her smile, hear the warmth in her voice as she asked, "Welcome to Featherlight. Are you looking for something special?" My mother's answer was muffled from where I stood, but then I heard her say, "We'd like to speak to the owner." I came down the staircase slowly, each step deliberate. When they saw me, their faces registered surprise, then confusion. "Emily?" my mother said, as if she wasn't sure I was real. My father's mouth opened, then closed. The associate turned to them, oblivious to the undercurrent. "Ms. Carter is the owner," she said brightly. Silence. The kind that stretches and pulls, filling every corner of a room. I gestured toward my private office. "Why don't we talk somewhere quieter?" Inside, the walls were lined with framed magazine covers, industry awards, and photographs of celebrities wearing my designs. A glass cabinet displayed one-of-a-kind pieces, each worth more than the car my parents used to drive. They sat across from me, taking it all in. My mother's eyes darted from the gold-leafed business license on the wall to the architectural sketches of my next boutique location. My father rubbed his hands together, a nervous habit I remembered from my childhood. Finally, my mother found her voice. This is yours." "Yes," I said evenly. "Every piece, every storefront, every design. Featherlight is mine." My father leaned back, exhaling like the truth had knocked the wind out of him. "You built all this?" I didn't answer right away. I let the silence work, let them feel the weight of everything they dismissed about me years ago. Finally, I said, "You remember that jewelry you sold? You said it was just jewelry. Well, it became the reason I'm sitting here today." My mother flinched. My father looked down. "I started with nothing but a silver charm Grandma gave me. No family support. No safety net. Just work. Years of it. And now, I gestured to the window where the boutique floor glittered under the lights. This is my life. Their silence wasn't just shock. It was recognition of what they'd lost and of the woman sitting in front of them who no longer needed their approval. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The soft hum of the boutique downstairs filled the silence, the click of heels against marble, the low murmur of customers admiring pieces they could only dream of owning. My mother finally broke the stillness. We didn't know, Emily. If we had. I held up my hand. Please. Don't finish that sentence. We both know you didn't believe in me. And that's fine. I made peace with it a long time ago. They exchanged a glance. My father cleared his throat. We're in a difficult place right now. The mortgage. I leaned forward, resting my forearms on the glass desk between us. I can help. But there are conditions. Their eyes sharpened, a mix of hope and suspicion. First, I said, if I help you financially, you will never again undermine my work or question my choices. Not in public, not in private. My mother opened her mouth, but I kept going. Second, you will find something of your own to pursue, a passion, a project, a purpose. I don't care if it's a community garden or writing a book, but you will not sit back and wait for me to fix everything. My father frowned. That's a lot to ask. It's the bare minimum, I said, my voice calm but firm. I let a beat pass before adding the last one. And third, the next time you wear jewelry, it will be something you've bought, not taken. You want a featherlight piece? You'll pay for it. Like every other customer. My mother's cheeks flushed. My father shifted uncomfortably, but neither of them argued. You said you're in trouble with the mortgage, I continued. I'll cover the next 3 months. Enough breathing room to make changes. But after that, it's on you. I stood, signaling the conversation was over. They rose slowly, still absorbing the shift, the reversal of power that put me in the position they'd once held over me. At the door, my mother hesitated. Emily, thank you. I gave her a small smile. Don't thank me yet. Change is harder than you think. As they left, the scent of jasmine and polished wood filled the air again. The boutique floor sparkled below, every piece a reminder. I had built this life on my terms. 3 months later, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a text, an actual handwritten letter in my mother's neat, looping script. She wrote about the small art classes she'd started teaching at the community center, how my father had begun repairing old furniture in the garage for extra income. She didn't ask for more money. She didn't make excuses. She just shared. I read it twice before setting it down on my desk, right next to the silver feather charm that had started it all. That week, I wore the charm to a photo shoot for Featherlight's newest campaign. The photographer noticed it and asked if we could incorporate it into the final shots. I agreed, not because it was my best design, but because it was my first reminder that even the smallest piece can carry the heaviest meaning. The campaign went live a month later. Billboards across the city showed my designs, draped in light, and at the center of it all, the silver feather resting against my collarbone. The caption read, "Some treasures can't be taken." One evening, as I was closing up the boutique, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. Saw the billboard on 5th Avenue. I remember when you first got that charm. Grandma would be proud. I stood by the boutique window for a long moment, looking out at the city lights reflecting off the glass. Years ago, they'd sold my jewelry for scraps of money. And for a long time, I thought they'd sold a part of me with it. But I was wrong. The truth was, they had only cleared the path. Taken away the things I thought I needed, so I could learn to build something bigger, something no one could take. I locked the boutique and stepped out into the night, the city air cool against my skin. My heels clicked on the pavement, steady and certain. In my mind, I heard the line I'd one day tell the world in my own voice. They sold my jewelry, but they couldn't sell my worth.